Krafchick. I am the founder of the Millennial Slackers Guide, which is a blog to teach people about basically everything they didn't teach us in school. I have Terri and Robert here. They are experts in burnout. We connected on LinkedIn. I think I sent a creepy message to Terri. She accepted, and we talked a couple weeks ago. It wasn't creepy, but social media is creepy, let's be honest. And we really connected. I'm on the board for a mental health nonprofit. They are looking to help people not burn out and to control their anxiety. So they're here today. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So, I've burnt out a few times. I'm only 30, and that's probably not good, but I've learned to take things one day at a time, and I can't conquer the world in a day. So I've learned to shut things off. What was it that got you guys in the burnout? Obviously you're husband, wife. So that's really cool that you have this similar passion when it comes to a sensitive subject.
Yeah. Right. 2 years ago, we'll say 2 years ago, I was struggling with burnout, not for the first time, obviously, but from a family issue with one of our kids, and trying to help me, Rob started digging back into burnout. Right.
Yeah.
And
this is you
handing off to you. It's like you started way back when.
That's a great part about these interviews are uncut, uncensored.
Yeah. So we it wasn't my first experience with burnout either. My first article that I wrote about burnout was back in 2005, and it was for IT and so forth. But I felt like I couldn't help Terri with the skills I had, and so I said, okay, so let me start reading. And I think we did a pretty good job of kind of getting you past that.
Right. Not easily, but we got there.
We got there, and then you started a conversation.
So we were giving a talk about conflict, and I was telling the woman who ran the facility, I said, oh, we've been doing some research on burnout. And she goes, oh my gosh, you guys have got to do a talk. I've got it scheduled the week before Thanksgiving. Now we're sitting into late September at this point. So week before Thanksgiving, you're going to do a talk on burnout. This is going to be great. We'll have dinner. I've got it all set up. And I kind of looked at Rob and like, and he gave me the same smile he's giving me now. And I said, oh, great, we'll be there. It'll be wonderful. And we came back to the office and we were starting to talk about it. And Rob says, I think we're going to have to write a book before we can give this talk in 6 weeks.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what I thought. This is a sure sign that we're going to be burnt out.
Yeah. Writing a book is not easy. Looking at anything, when you try and look at the whole picture and like, man, that's what I got to do versus bringing it up in bite-sized pieces. Like, all right, if I just write, 250 words a day, this is how long it'll take. So really breaking it down. And what's like, what strides have you guys made with burnout and teaching people how to avoid it? And, tell us about the progress you've made so far since beginning on this journey.
Well, maybe if you don't mind, why don't we explain what burnout is?
Yeah. What everyone has a different definition, so we want to make sure we're speaking the same language.
Right. So burnout classically is described as exhaustion, cynicism, and inefficacy. And we've all been exhausted, right? You can work as hard as you possibly can and be completely passionate and love what you're doing and exhausted and not burn out. Cynicism happens more when we don't feel effective. We can't get things done and we get cynical. So then we get down to this inefficacy, which really becomes causal, not so much as, a sign that you're there.
Right. And so when we feel ineffective, we end up in burnout. And so I think we do that definition to get back to your question, which is like, how have we seen the impact? And there's been some folks that we've talked to who are coaches. These are people that are helping other people who have lots of experience in mental health and so on and so forth. And they run through the program and they're like, this was amazing. I'm like, okay, well, thanks, but why? And it's, just getting that clarity about this is what it really is about. And now I can work on how do I help myself feel more effective, right? And not necessarily that you are more effective, not, go conquer the world, get less sleep, but how do you feel like you're doing what you're supposed to do, what you're meant to do, what is in your heart of hearts? And that for us, I think, has been some of the best affirmation we could get that we're doing the right thing.
Do you think this is like a generational thing? Do you think it's like people my age are just complaining because we don't want to work hard and we want to be the, you know, the big man on campus or the big woman on campus from day one? Or do you feel like it's, you know, pretty linear across the board?
I don't think there's any generational or that, you know, it's a perspective of who I want to be, as much as, you know, in our heads, we all feel like there are certain things we have to achieve, whether it's today, this week, this month. You know, I got to do this to be successful, whatever this is. That may be realistic, it may not be. And if you don't do whatever it is you've set yourself up to, then you don't feel effective.
Yeah.
So,
And you guys were mentioning ineffective. And by ineffective, do you mean like having purpose? Do you mean like getting the job done? What is it? Do you mean by that? Because I mean, I can go to a job that someone pays me a salary for, and I can stay on my phone all day, and I got paid, but I was ineffective. Do you
Right.
mind elaborating on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's about your sense, not actual objective reality, but your sense that you're getting something accomplished. So let's think about it this way, right? Like, so you go out and you go to build a retaining wall. You go to do some landscaping and you get done twice as much as you expect, right? You are like, yeah, I've got it, right? Now, same thing, reverse it and say you get half as much done as you expect. And like, oh, this was so awful. I feel like I didn't get anything done, right? Well, the key there is your expectation. In both cases, you could be doing the same amount of work. You could be getting the same amount accomplished, but your expectation can be so skewed. Hey, I am going to spread, 50 yards of mulch today. Well, that's not humanly possible for one human,
Yeah.
right? Or you could say, oh, I have this wheelbarrow. I'm going to spread the wheelbarrow worth. Okay, well, you'll clear that one pretty easily. So part of it is understanding your expectations, and are your expectations reasonable? Right. But I want to jump back for just a second because you asked the generational question. Terri gave a great answer to that. But I want to share one other piece. Like, I look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and I can tell you the data about the way that people move between jobs, the job tenure, that data is the same. It's the same for my generation, and they didn't collect it for my father's generation, but it's the same, right? And so I know a lot of people are bagging on millennials, going, "Oh, well, they just can't keep a job, and they don't want to work." And no, that honestly, that's just not true. It doesn't match the data we have. The data we have says that you're still trying to find yourself, right?
Fake
Like,
news, right?
and
Would
find
you
your
say it is
path and
fake news
understand.
that millennials just jump from job to job?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I started out, I had several jobs, right? Like everybody does that. It's a natural fact of the fact that you're starting out and you don't know what you want.
right. Or what you want isn't what you've got.
Right. And so, Josh, you're asking earlier about passion, right? And how does that connect to burnout? You get this hope, this drive, this sense that you will accomplish something when you're aligned with your passions. Right. And so when you're not aligned with your passions, it isn't like it's going to automatically send you to burnout. Because if you feel super effective, but you're not exactly aligned to your passions, you'll still be fine.
Right.
It's that moment, right? And it's kind of like where the penny drops. It's that moment where you're like, I'm not doing anything with my life, because you changed your assessment of what it means to be productive, to be effective, right? And all of a sudden, instead of it's being, oh, I'm selling widgets or I'm building X or whatever, I've changed to, oh my gosh, I have to change the world.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you switch your metrics, and your metrics change, and you're like, I've not changed the world. So it is connected to your passion, particularly if you discover it and you all of a sudden decide that you have wasted, Meatloaf has a song, Wasted Youth. When you suddenly decide that you've wasted all this time, but I think you can look at that differently too. I think you can look at that as it took that experience to get you to knowing what you wanted to do and what your purpose and passion are.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think since I graduated college, I've had 5 or 6 jobs, all
Yeah.
before 30. And now
Yeah.
I have my own firm. And I mean, for me, like personally, I literally like at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't think I did enough. Like I did everything I could. Like I'm exhausted. I'm like, I literally asked myself, did I do enough today? And the answer is typically no, because that's like how it's instilled in my brain because I'm not where I want to be at. So like,
Yeah,
is that how is that common?
it is common. And one of those things you talk about is how do we talk to ourselves? So you tell yourself at the end of the day, you didn't do enough. Holy cow, what's wrong with you? Now, would you ever say that to anybody else?
If I was a jerk.
Right, if you were a jerk.
Would you say that to your friends?
Right, would you say that to
It
your friends?
depends
Right.
on the friend. Maybe maybe my friend's been screwing up for a few years. We might have to have that stern talking to, but typically no.
Right. So what happens is too frequently we tell ourselves things that we would never say to anybody else. We are not compassionate to ourselves in general. So it's recognizing that what we say to ourselves, you've got to balance it. So if I say, wow, I really screwed up today and I didn't get anything done and wow, I'm really stupid. Well, how do I measure that? And sometimes it's asking someone you trust. So this is what I think. Do you see it the same way? They may say, oh my gosh, no, that's not what anybody else sees. And that's important, is to learn to talk to yourself in a way that is beneficial and honest, rather than tearing yourself down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing you said was enough.
Yeah, you're never good enough for yourself, right?
Well, that's why we're always getting, I think they wrote in James Clear, Atomic Habits, you're either getting 1% better or 1% worse every day. And if you get 1% worse every day, you're at 0 by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the way I look at it. So how do we overcome these obstacles? What advice can you give, all the people out there that are, maybe they've experienced burnout, they haven't experienced it yet. How can we start laying the groundworks to make sure we don't ever go through that? Because having gone through it and experiencing it, it's not something you want someone to go through.
Right. You went
Go for it.
burnout or
Bathtub.
bathtub? So to make it easy, if you think about a bathtub, okay, you have this bathtub that's sitting here. That's your personal agency. It's your ability to get something done, okay? And you have 3 things that fill your bathtub, and that's your results, your support, and your self-care. Each of those things have a valve on them. You can increase it or you can decrease it. And knowing that you need to keep your bathtub full, you need to make sure you're filling those in, right? So it's the support you get from other people.
Right.
It is recognizing the things you've done. We talked about, hey, look at what you've done realistically. Self-care, and I'm not saying, hey, go exercise, but how do you do the things that give you joy and peace, right?
Yeah.
And self-care actually makes your bathtub bigger. It's the only thing that will do that. And the other side of your bathtub is demands. Do you want to do demands?
And so demands are really funny, right? Because we think like the world has got all these demands for us. Everybody else has got all these things that they want us to do and they want us to do. But what's funny is when you really look at it, there's 2 things. One, you can say no. Like a 2-year-old totally figured out the word no.
No.
Like as adults, we don't remember what the word no does, right? We're like, oh, well, I don't want them to not like me, so I'm going to make them, I'm going to say yes to this thing that I really don't want to do, but I can't have them not liking me. That's not okay. So you can say no.
And that has a valve too.
And right, so the demands have a valve. You can say yes or no, right? But there's the other part of it, and this is probably this is one of those more profound statements. This is one of those sit on a mountain and meditate kind of things. But most of the demands that are put on you aren't put on you by other people. Most of the demands, most of them are you. Most of them are, I'm going to do things at this level. If I'm going to be creative, I'm going to go into a room and I'm going to spread tarps around and I'm going to throw paint, right? And somebody else is like, no, color by number was fine, right? Like a little color by number would have been fine. I mean, that's a work of art, but we don't have the same standards that other people have. And that's a good thing, right? I'm not saying it's bad, but we've got to recognize that sometimes the demands that we have on us, all this load that we're carrying, we put on our own backs.
Those are the shoulds.
Those are the shoulds. Don't should all over the place.
Right? I should do this. I should do that. That's not helpful. And it's not somebody else saying you have to. It's your choice.
Yeah, it's like when you ask someone, hey, like, you want to get lunch too on Wednesday? And like, yeah, that should work. That's always a red flag, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as you were saying, as far as not saying no, what are your thoughts on like people who are doing things and maybe I feel like we live in a world, not a lot of people support each other. It's like kind of weird. Like, how can that contribute to burnout too? Because like we know people are working hard and what they do is never good enough. Like, oh man, like, one friend showed up, but these 5 friends didn't show up. Thinking about the negative. So is that something you guys have any insight on?
Start with asking.
Go for it.
So I think there's a couple of pieces, and I think one of the things you flagged was, hey, what happens when your friends don't show up for you? And that's an important piece. I want to get to it, but I want to start with the biggest problem that we see in terms of support is not being willing to ask for it,
or wanting to accept it,
right? And so, how many times has a friend said to you, hey, I could go do this for you. I can go get this for you. I can go bring this to you, or I can help you build this or whatever. Right. And you're like, no, I got it, man. It's okay. Thanks. I'm good.
I can do it.
And that's all. I mean, that's great. There's self-efficacy in doing it yourself. Totally get all that stuff. But at some point you have to ask yourself, like, why am I saying no? Here's somebody.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to reframe it for you, right? Here's a buddy who wants to hang out with you. The fact that you're cleaning your garage while you're hanging out, he doesn't care. The part that he really wants is to hang out, right?
Yeah.
And so that's part of it. And I think the other part, which is where you started with, was the, what happens when people don't show? Well, that's harder because you have to decide, is this who they are? And am I going to accept who they are?
Yeah.
There are some people in our lives who are going to be flakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really exactly mean that bad, right? Like, what I'm really saying is they say they're going to be there, and really you can roll a die, and if it comes up a 1, they'll be there.
Yeah.
But the other 5 answers, nah.
We call that ghosting.
Right. And we have, and it's not intentional, and it's not about you. And understanding how to not take that personally. Like, I've got a friend who his name is Marty, and we call his timing Marty Standard Time. Okay,
really? That's interesting.
It does not conform to any known time zone.
Right, and it's not consistent.
No, it's not consistent. Right,
that's like my friend's dad named Marty. Maybe it's a Marty thing, and we were supposed to play golf, and he just never showed up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, most of the time, Marty, if my friend Marty's Standard Time, if he commits to something, he's going to do it. He's just not going to do it at the time he said, right? He'd be like, hey, I'll be over there in 15 minutes. And 3 hours later, he shows up and you're like, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, I told you I was going to be right over. And I'm like, yeah, I think we have different definitions on time.
Yeah.
But that's not about Marty. Marty's a great friend, right? Like, you have friends, okay, so you have friends that'll help you move, right? That's great, right? A real friend will help you move a body, right? And that's the kind of friend Marty is, right?
Does he show up on time to move a body from your experience?
No, not generally.
Okay.
If I tell him the house is on fire, though, he'll show up on time.
Gotcha.
He recognizes that's urgent.
Sweet.
He figures the dead body, it's not going to do anything.
For sure. Well, wrapping up here, this has been really valuable, providing some insight on burnout. Is there anything you'd like to share with anyone that may watch it? Any takeaways, anything you're working on you want to plug in for them?
So through July 22nd, which is my birthday, Our
Happy
Extinguish
birthday.
Burnout course, thank you. Our Extinguish Burnout course is free online for anybody who signs up. You sign up, you have a year's worth of access. Lots of great information. You can find that on extinguishburnout.com. The code on that is COVID-19.
COVID-19.
COVID-19, knowing that, all the changes around COVID.
Dash or a hyphen?
Hyphen.
All right. I want to clarify that, so everyone
good
has
job.
different distance. Sometimes it's a dash. It's this one, right?
It's the minus
It's
sign.
horizontal line
Okay.
in the middle.
Yes. And that information's on the website. You can see where it says this is the code, put it in. But that's just our way of trying to help during this time that's really tough.
Yeah. And even after July 22nd, if we don't extend that offer, there are weekly emails and videos, 5-minute videos. There are all kinds of little sheets and help tip sheets that you can get to, an entire burnout recovery toolkit that is free. And it'll pop up and ask you about that. Like, hey, would you like the toolkit? And you can go, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you very much for your time. This is awesome. I had fun. I learned something. I know anyone that watches this, even if one person watches it, then it's a win. That's one less person to be burnt out from the long life that we all have to live. So thank you so much for being on here and everything. Really value that.